My name is Forrest, and I live in tiny Ontario. And a lot of times people think that's really weird that your name is Forrest and you live in a town named Tiny, and my postal code starts with LOL. And that's for real. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about how to get from where you are to where you want to be. And a lot of times in life, we don't want to be where we are, but sometimes it's the best place for us is where we are at this present moment. How deep is the mud? It depends on who you ask. So we all go through the same stuff differently. Some of us right now might feel we're up to here, and some of us might feel that we're stepping in a little mud puddle. It's just all how you look at it. How others see you is not important. How you see yourself means everything. And that's true for all of us. We should all see ourselves as the beautiful people we are on the inside, just like this little old lady who still sees herself as a beautiful dancer. I'd like to start by talking about the social media and the impact it has on mental health. And it's been such a big thing in our lives, especially lately in the last year and a half with everything that's going on. People seem to be looking more into social media as their outlet to see what's going on in the world, but it's also having a huge impact on our mental health. So I'd like to share a Facebook story with you that takes 45 seconds. And this Facebook story is about my rich childhood. And everything I'm about to tell you is true. So what I'd invite you to do is close your eyes if you want to. The story only takes 45 seconds. I'll share the story and you could paint a picture in your mind as I share the story. The research shows that you can visualize 1,000 times better with your eyes closed than open. So growing up, we had several homes, many homes. We traveled constantly, not just on summer vacation, we traveled in the winter also, all year round. My dad had more cars than Justin Bieber. The cost of heat was not an issue at our house. It didn't matter if we left the windows and doors open. One of our homes had a 30-foot cabin cruiser out back. And I'm grateful for my mom and dad for the gift they gave me of love, kindness, compassion, and empathy. And oh yeah, I was rich. Now I want you to think about how you feel about me right now. And you might be thinking, wow, I had the same childhood. Or you might be thinking, what a jerk. I didn't come here to listen to this. Whatever it is you're feeling right inside right now, I want you to know that you created it. I gave you the words, and you've now created this feeling you're feeling about me right now inside. And we do this every single day on social media. So now I'll invite you to open your eyes again and watch the screen. And I'm going to share the same story with you. And remember, everything I told you is true, and you're created the feelings you're feeling right now. See, growing up, we had many homes. I didn't say they were nice homes. We lived in some pretty bad homes. I learned at a young age that what it meant that we had to move because we didn't pay the rent. And we traveled constantly, not just in the summer, we traveled in the winter also. We moved and moved and moved. I never spent one whole year in the same school. I lived in almost every province across Canada. My dad had more cars than Justin Bieber. I didn't say they were nice cars. You see, we had those yards that you drive by and there's cars up on blocks or old trucks that are not running. And the cost of heat was not an issue at our house. We could leave the doors and windows open if we wanted to, because we were the kids who had to cut and split the wood to feed the wood stove. One of our homes did have a 30-foot cabin cruiser out back. I never said it was in the water. It actually had a tree growing through it. My brothers and I used to go out there and hide. And I'm grateful for the gift my mom and dad gave me of love, kindness, compassion, and empathy. You see, I grew up in an extremely violent and abusive home. And for that reason, my mother left when I was 6 years old, and she never returned, not even to this day. But the gift they gave me was how not to treat another human being. And I'm so grateful that I was given that gift at such a young age, because I know people now in their 50s and 60s who don't know how to treat other people. And it's just such a valuable gift I've been given. And oh yeah, I was rich, not with money. I was rich with imagination. You see, I could go out into those old cars or trucks and use my imagination to escape the reality I was living in and drive off into the sunset or pretend I was going on a fishing trip. That's what I was rich with. Now, I'll ask you now, did you paint a different picture than I did? And I share this story all over the world, and most of the times people did paint a different picture. And we do this every single day on social media. And we're stealing our own joy by comparing ourselves with others. Technical difficulty here. I'm trying to switch the slide. So what's happening right now is what's skyrocketing is Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram. And what's skyrocketing right beside it is depression, anxiety, and suicide is going through the roof at the same rate. And a lot of it has to do with all of us comparing ourselves with others. And so I would ask you to stop comparing yourself with others, and it will make you much more happy and you'll feel much more joy. Can anyone tell me what's wrong with this puppy dog? You can just take your mic off mute for a minute and just shout out any answers.
Maybe a hip dysplasia?
Hip dysplasia. Anything else?
Maybe someone's abusive and a douchebag?
Actually, this when the mother was pregnant with the pup, she was hit by a car. And because the mother was hit by a car, they couldn't put the mother under to do surgery on her back legs without risking losing the pups. So they made the mother as comfortable as possible. And weeks went by and she went on to have her pups. And one of the pups came out dragging her hind legs. And the owner just thought that, you know, maybe the pup was injured when the mom was hit by the car. So a few weeks went by, they decided, let's get the dog looked at. So they brought it to the veterinary office where they did a physical inspection and x-rays. And it turns out there was nothing wrong with the pup at all. She was only doing what she's seen her mother do. And I ask, how many of us watching this right now are dragging our hind legs in life from things we've seen as children, whether it's abuse, neglect, or addiction? Many of us drag our hind legs through life thinking that what happened to us as children is going to be with us for the rest of our lives. And I'm here to share with you that you don't have to drag your hind legs anymore. So once this pup was removed from the mother, within a few days, it was being around other dogs. It was running around normal again. So they removed it from the environment it was in, and the dog was doing much better. Gratitude is the single most important ingredient to living a successful and fulfilled life. And I'd ask you just to share one thing you're grateful for, and you can unmute and just go ahead and share what one thing you're grateful for. It could be that it's not raining outside, or it's beautiful.
I'm grateful for this session.
Thank you. When you're grateful for something, even if it's just something so small, it makes you feel good and it brings you joy. So every morning I wake up and think, what am I grateful for? And it could be that I'm having toast with peanut butter again. It's just something so small that's makes you smile. I'm really grateful for my new lease on life. In October 2002, I had a vehicle for sale, and a gentleman wanted to come and try it out. And I sat in the passenger seat and I gave him the keys. And this is what happened next. I left the driveway that day, not knowing that my life would be changed forever. And it only took seconds. You see, he was talking to his son on the phone saying, I'm going to be late for supper. I'm trying a car out. And then he lost control and the car flipped end for end. And I woke up 10 days later at a trauma center in Toronto. I didn't know who I was, where I was. I didn't know my wife's name or my son's name. I was diagnosed with a catastrophic brain injury. Mike Tyson has a famous saying that everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. And many of us watching this right now have had a punch in the face. And a punch in the face in life could be a loss of a loved one, job that didn't work out, a relationship that didn't work out, or it could be a brain injury. You know, we all have these plans. I'm going to do this in life and I'm going to do that. And then sometimes we get punched in the face and we get set back. And we have to decide, am I going to let that hold me back? Or am I going to get back up again and fight for my life? For me, this was the punch in the face, was this car accident. Laying there in bed, I was in rehab for 5.5 years, and I felt that I'm just going to lay down and let the world beat me up. You know, why should I get up and fight? You know, I just felt so depressed and so much despair. Things were not looking good. And over the next 5.5 years, I went through 14 different operations to rebuild my face, arms, hips, and leg. I went to physiotherapy, went from a wheelchair to a walker to a cane, then walking on my own, then speech therapy, 5.5 years of speech therapy, occupational therapy. I was on many, many drugs. One of them that I was taking was OxyContin and Percocet. Because of all the operations I had, they were just giving me all these prescriptions. So I kept taking them. And I didn't realize that after the wheelchairs were gone and the casts were off, I still kept taking these pills because I didn't realize that it not only soothed physical pain, it soothed emotional pain. And I think because I was hurt, I wasn't the same person I used to be. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, depression. I had anxiety disorder. I didn't want to be around people. I didn't want to leave my house. And everyone feels it. I thought it was me, poor me, poor me. So my depression was the biggest expression of an ego because it was all about me. Poor me, poor me, oh, my problems. And I didn't realize that once I stopped focusing on myself and started focusing on others and volunteering, the depression lifted. And it's an amazing thing when you can help someone else and you're helping yourself at the same time. It's an amazing thing. There was a time I thought I wanted to be alone, and it turns out I just had to find out where I belonged. And that's here with you guys right now, and in colleges, schools, workplaces all around the world, sharing these stories with people that you can turn your life around and things can be better, even if it's just a little bit better. I still have problems with fatigue and memory, and I still work on it. But I'm happy that if I can make a little improvement each day, that's a victory for me. One morning, as I was contemplating suicide, laying in my bed, I had the blankets over my face, and this TV commercial came on, and it said, "Up next is Jack Canfield, the co-creator of Chicken Soup for the Soul, with his new book, The Success Principles: How to Get from Where You Are to Where You Want to Be." And I remember that day pulling the blankets off my face and sitting up thinking, I don't know where I want to be, but I don't want to be here right now. And he went on in this talk on television, on breakfast television, and he said, what would you do if there were no limitations, if anything were possible? And as I was lying there, I thought, wow, what would I do? You know what I would do is I would learn to speak fluently and be a speaker like this guy on TV. And I would learn to read and write books. And I would also overcome depression and anxiety and help others get through this terrible thing that I was feeling. And then I thought, wow, what a dream. It just seems so far out of reality for me. So I'll ask you, what would you do if there were no limitations? If anything were possible, what would you do? So fast forward 10 years of living the success principles. When I purchased the book, I, I brought it to my speech therapist. She would come to the house 3 to 4 times a week. And I said, I got this book. And the guy said, if you apply these principles in your life, you can turn your life around. And she thought it was pretty big, ambitious goal because the book is so thick. It's about 600 pages. But she helped me read it, and it took a year and a half to read it. And 10 years later, I got off all medication completely. So I've been off all medication since 2007. I've become a #1 bestseller. I received the Lieutenant Governor's Award from David Onley. I've been able to travel all around the world. And I was named one of the top 50 difference makers by Definers Magazine in 2016. So that was a big honor for me. And then that guy that I've seen on the TV that day, I now work with him and travel all over the world with him. It's just amazing how things turn around. 10 years ago, I couldn't even spell New York Times bestseller. Now my story of transformation is the biggest story in this book, and the New York Times bestseller with over 1 million copies in print. This is the first book I wrote that was #1 bestseller. Baseballs Don't Bounce. And the way that I came up with the title of that story was, it was my son's 7th birthday, and his friends came over, and he was ripping his gifts open. And then he ripped open this, there was a baseball glove and a ball, and he threw the ball on the ground, and it just went thud. And he looked at it and picked it up again and threw it on the ground, and it just went thud. His friend shouted, "Baseballs don't bounce." And I just broke down crying. I had to go in the house because I was so overwhelmed with emotion, because I thought, wow, he doesn't know baseballs don't bounce. I've never thrown a ball with him. Someone else taught him how to ride a bike. Someone else taught him how to skate. I spent more time with my depression and my poor me thoughts than I did with my son from the time he was 2 until he was 7. And that was the day I gave up all my excuses and poor me stories and said, something has to change. I have to turn my life around. So those were the words that really rocked my world. The second book I wrote was 12 Hugs to Happiness, and it's a children's book that shares with kids that it's okay to talk about your emotions and how you feel, and if you're feeling depressed or anxious. And all the characters are people that I've met from all around the world. I went from tiny to Dubai. And like I said, I live here in tiny Ontario, and I was hired by Dubai Airports and Emirates Airlines to be keynote speaker there on how to reduce stress and anxiety in the workplace. And there was 1,250 people in that room, and I couldn't believe it that here's a guy that just 10 years ago was diagnosed with social anxiety disorder, and I didn't even want to leave my house. Now I was speaking in front of 1,250 people. And when I started speaking, the first time was at the March of Dimes Brain Injury Association conference, and it was in front of about 80 people, and I was so shaking and scared, and I was shaking like a leaf. And the more you do things and you get out of your comfort zone, the more you'll be comfortable with it. That was at the Dubai Airports Awards. Got to meet some neat people like Mike Tyson. I was speaking in India, London, England. That's the hotel in England. But the highlight of my trip to England was speaking at this school for at-risk youth. And this young man that you see with the book, he just had his arms crossed like this the whole time. And he said, I'm not listening. I'm not listening. This is rubbish. I said, well, you get out of it what you put into it. And that's the way things go in life. If you want to put forward an effort, you'll get things in return. And at the end of the talk, this young man said to me, he said, is this just once, or are you coming back? And I thought, wow, that really touched me. I said, I'd love to come back. he said, I'd love to come back. I'd love you to come back also. He really enjoyed it, but the whole time he just sat there with his arms crossed and didn't want to participate. So if you can touch one person's life, it's a great feeling. You're not stuck. You're just afraid to do what's next. And so many of us feel like we're stuck. You know, whether it's moving forward, or you want to ask for a job, or you want to ask for a raise, or you want to ask someone on a date. A lot of times we feel stuck in a relationship or a job. We're just afraid to take that next step. So you're never stuck. Just feel the fear and do it anyway. Take that next step. Have any of you heard of Deepak Chopra and Oprah Winfrey? I always hoped that they would get married. Then her name would be Oprah Chopra. And it just sounds fun to say. So in 2012, Oprah Winfrey came to Canada for the first time, and all the tickets sold out within minutes. And my mother-in-law always had a dream of seeing Oprah Winfrey show live. And because it was sold out, her dreams were dashed. But they came up with a contest. They said, if you can make a YouTube video that will inspire people like Oprah, you can win a trip for two to the Oprah Winfrey show. So my mother-in-law was nagging me, make a video, make a video. And I thought, who wants to see a video about somebody with a brain injury? And she kept bugging me. And eventually I asked my friend who does videos to help me. So I made this video, and I won the trip to the Oprah show, and I was able to take my mother-in-law to see Oprah. I've never seen an Oprah show in my life. First time I seen her was in live in person. I'll share the video with you.
I know how to hold a grudge. I can send a bridge up in smoke. I can't count the people I've let down, the hearts I broke. You ain't gotta dig too deep if you wanna find some dirt on me. But I'm learning who you've been ain't who you gotta be. It's gonna be an uphill climb. Oh, honey, I won't lie. I ain't no angel. I still got a few more dances with the devil. I'm cleaning up my act little by little. I'm getting there. I can finally stand the man in the mirror I see. I ain't as good as I'm gonna get, but I'm better than I used to be. I pinned a lot of demons to the ground. Got a few old habits left, but there's still one or two I might need you to help me get. Standing in the rain so long has left me with a little rust. But put some faith in me and someday you'll see there's a diamond under all this dust. I ain't no angel. I've still got a few more dances with the devil. Cleaning up my act little by little. I'm getting there. I can finally stand the man in the mirror I see. I ain't as good as I'm gonna get, but I'm better than I used to be. I ain't no angel.
So you can see in the pictures, I was missing teeth often, and the only person smiling more than me right now is my dentist, because I think he bought a new boat with all the money that he charged me for dental work. So number one principle in that book I shared with you, the success principles, is to take 100% responsibility for your life. And that was hard for me because I felt that it was the guy driving the car, it was his problem and his fault why that I was in this situation I was in. But it wasn't until I took 100% responsibility for my life and my happiness that I could see that this would really change my life. And I forgave that person, and I'm glad that I did. Yeah, so now I know that it's my responsibility to get better, because I used to wait for the speech therapist to show up and wonder why my speech wasn't improving. Well, I wasn't working on it when she wasn't there. I would read. Well, my speech therapist was there, and then she would leave and I wouldn't read anymore. It wasn't until I started taking responsibility and doing the things I needed to do when the other people weren't there, that's when things started to really change. Same with physiotherapy, where I would start doing exercises, not just at the physiotherapy. This is an equation that you can write down. It's E plus R equals O. And it's something I'm reminded of every day. And E plus R equals O means event plus response equals outcome. So if you have an event happen in your life, for me, it was this car accident. And my response was, poor me, life sucks. My outcome was a life of misery and depression that I didn't want to be in anymore. And I wanted a different outcome. But could I go back and change the event? No. You can never go back and change the event. The only thing you can change is how you respond to what happens to you. That's where the power is, in the response. So I started to respond with a positive attitude, a more upbeat look at life, thinking things will get better. And it changed my outcome. I now live a life that I'm happy with, and I'm excited to wake up every day. So if you can just remember E plus R equals O, and next time something happens to you, think about how you're going to respond to it. I wrote in my book, 12 Hugs to Happiness, that you need 4 hugs a day for survival, 8 hugs a day for maintenance, and 12 hugs a day for growth. And I wonder how many of us right now have got 12 hugs today, especially with what's going on in the world. Not many of us are getting many hugs right now. But I really believe hugs are very healing for people. I didn't get them growing up. I just started to as I got older, and I love to give and receive hugs.
Harry Jones again.
So this is Harry Jones. I was speaking in Philadelphia, and every morning I walk, and as I'm walking, I pass some homeless people, and he said, "Can you spare some change?" I said, "No, but I'll buy you lunch." So for the next 4 days I was in Philadelphia, I brought him and his friends to McDonald's for breakfast. And Harry was a homeless man, a Vietnam veteran, and he made a huge impact on my life. And I'll just share with you how he did that.
The people in the world stand united together.
So right there, you can see Harry giving me a hug. And as we stopped hugging, Harry was crying, and I thought he was overwhelmed because I was leaving town or that I'd given him some money. And I said, "What's wrong, Harry? What's up?" And he's crying really quite a bit. He said, "Nobody hugs me. People don't even look me in the eye." And I started crying. I thought, oh my God, it's so true, because so many people just walk by homeless people and they look the other way. And I look back to when I was in a wheelchair, and I remember people wouldn't look at me, in the eye. If you're in a mall or in a doctor's office, it's almost like they would look up at the sign or look up somewhere else. And I have to remind people that we're all humans, and everyone deserves a smile and deserves to be looked at in the eyes and appreciated. One day, someone's going to hug you so tight that all your broken pieces will stick back together. And I hope that's true for all of you. Whatever you want in life, give it. So many people say, they'll sit at home, go, nobody calls me, I don't have any friends. Well, go out and be a friend to somebody. If you want more hugs, go out and give some hugs. If you want more friends, go out and be a friend to somebody. Whatever it is you want, if you give it, it will come back to you. You see the big circle? This is where the magic happens. And the little circle over there, that's your comfort zone. And that's where a lot of us are stuck. We're so stuck in our comfort zone that we don't get to experience the good things and the things that will make us happy and the things we want to do. And if you don't know what a comfort zone is, I can share that with you. So if you see Albert Einstein here has his hands crossed. So if all of you can cross your hands just the way you normally do. If you all have your hands crossed. So what I'll ask you to do is now separate your fingers and drop them down one finger so the opposite thumb is on top. How does that feel? Weird, awkward, yucky, not good? Now put your hands back the way you always do. Oh, that feels good. And that's your comfort zone. And that's why things don't change in your life. And that's why you're afraid to try new things. Because this is different and it feels awkward and yucky and not good. But if you did this for 30 days, it would feel normal. And the same thing happens when you try something different or you go out and meet new people. It'll feel awkward and yucky and not good. But we get so stuck in our comfort zone that we don't want to reach out and try new things. So I'd encourage you to get comfortable being uncomfortable. The power of 3 is something that I do every day. I do something good for myself, I do something good for my family, and I do something good for a stranger without any expectation of anything in return. And what happens is it comes back to you many times over when you give without expectation of anything in return. So I want to ask you, what would your life look like a year from now if over 1,000 good things happened to you? And I can share with you in my life, it's just phenomenal. It's unbelievable, the things that happen when you go out and do good things for others. So what I would encourage you to do, practice the power of 3. And I would encourage you to stop comparing yourself with others. We learned this in the beginning. Shaquille O'Neal was one of the tallest players in basketball in the NBA, and Earl Boykins was one of the smallest people. But he beat Shaquille O'Neal almost every time he went up against him. He was quicker, more agile. And a lot of times we look up at other things and you say, I can't go out and do that. This short little guy might have been terrified, but he didn't let it show. He went out and played and won games against them. So stop comparing yourself with others. And learn to love yourself. Love and accept yourself just the way you are. Remember to give yourself a good hug today and every day. I want to leave you with the story of Bobsy. Bobsy was a 6-year-old boy living in Phoenix, Arizona, and he was diagnosed with terminal leukemia. And the doctor gave his mother the news that he had about 3 weeks to live. There was nothing they could do. And she thought, this is just too painful. His dreams aren't going to come true. And so she looked down at his bedside and said, Bobsy, have you ever thought of what you want to be when you grow up? And he said with a big smile on his face, he said, Mom, I want to be a fireman. She said, let's see if we can make that happen. So that night when Bobsy went to sleep, she went down to the local fire hall and explained her son's situation to the fire chief and said, is there any way possible you could take him for a ride in a fire truck? And the chief was so touched by the story, he said, we can do better than that. We make the uniforms right here in Phoenix. So if you give me his sizes, we can make him a real uniform, a real jacket and hat and boots, not a toy one, and we'll make him an honorary fireman for the day. So the following Wednesday came and the chief went up to the hospital room and suited up Bobsy in his fire uniform and carried him down to the waiting ladder truck. And on the way back to the hall, Bobsy got to stand on the back of the ladder truck and help steer the truck. And he had a big smile on his face the size of Arizona. And that day, he got to go on 3 fire calls. He rode on the chief's car, an ambulance, and a police car. And he was also interviewed by Fox Television News. And that day, the chief brought him back to his hospital room after being a fireman. And the following weeks and months that went by, the chief would stop by and other firefighters would stop by to see Bobsy. And on the night that Bobsy's vital signs were failing, the nurse who believes in hospice, that nobody should die alone, called the fire department and said, is there any way possible you could send someone over to see Bobsy for one last time? The chief said, we can do better than that. I want you to make an announcement on the PA system that when the fire trucks show up to the hospital with the lights and sirens on, that there's not a fire. We're just coming to see one of our finest one last time. And one more thing, open his window. And so the trucks came down the street with the lights and sirens going, and they raised the ladder truck up to the 3rd-story window. And 4 firemen and 2 firewomen climbed in, and with his mother's permission, they took turns rocking him, telling him how much of a difference he's made in their life and how much they loved him. And Bobsy opened his eyes and said, Chief, am I really a fireman? He said, yes, you are, Bobsy. And Bobsy smiled and closed his eyes for the last time. And I share that story with you for 2 reasons. One is, there isn't one of you watching this right now that wouldn't do anything humanly possible to make that child's dream come true. And the second is, I think there's a little Bobsy in each and every one of us. We all have a little kid inside with goals and hopes and dreams that are still unfulfilled. And you would do anything humanly possible to make that child's dream come true. Now it's time to do it for the child inside of you. And if you do that, you'll see that your life will just be amazing and fun. And I'd like to share with you, Bobsy lived 3 months longer than any doctor thought possible, all because someone made his dreams come true. So Bobsy's mother and the fire chief then created a program called Make-A-Wish Foundation, realizing that making someone's dream come true prolongs their life. When you have something to look forward to, the health issues seem to go away and you live longer. So I thank you all for having me today, and